Welcome to the Fighting on Film podcast, the podcast all about classic and obscure war movies, from the Normandy landings to the days of chivalry and swords. If it's been captured on film, we're going to try and cover it. I'm Robbie of RM Military History.
I'm Matthew Moss of Historical Firearms and the Armourer's Bench. Hello, welcome back to Fighting on Film. This week we are thrilled to bring you our talk that we did a couple of weeks ago now, almost a month, at the We Have Ways Festival 2024. We were thrilled to be asked back as guests. If you didn't catch our roundup of the festival that we put out a few weeks ago, you can find that on our website, fightingonfilm.com. You can check that out. We were joined by our great friend Sebastian Abineri, who was a member of Attenborough's private army, to discuss his time working on the film as a supporting member of the cast. And Seb's got great stories. We had an absolute ball chatting to him, and we had a great crowd. It was just a really nice chat with Seb, and everyone
fantastic.
really enjoyed the stories. You can hear it in the questions at the end of the ep. But you know, big shout out to We Have Ways, especially Joey who sent us across the audio. They were kind of
Annie and Tony, all the Goalhanger pod staff,
all of
just
them.
Absolute top draw people, just some of the best. You know, and the sound techs that we have just every year, they go above and beyond to make you feel so welcome and everything else.
Absolute professionals,
it's just brilliant.
Lovely people, and they were very kind to send us across the audio, and we're really happy to share it with you all. You know, because not everyone could make it to the festival, and we're really happy to share it with everyone, because obviously not everyone can make it to the festival, and we're thrilled to share Seb's stories and the chat.
Yeah, fantastic. And just before I press play on that one, a little bit of FOF admin. So if you listened last week, you'd have learned that we're having some issues with our Spotify. I've been in contact with the Acast reps, and we know what the problem is now. So give us a couple of weeks and hopefully it will be rectified. So some of you may have to have a mega FOF binge to catch up, but you can still catch the show on Acast and our website to keep you in the loop until that's solved. And YouTube, of course. Yeah, and thanks everyone for getting us up to 300 subs on there. So that was quite nice. Thank you very much. But yeah, so when it's fully sorted, we'll let you all know, and hopefully, you know, then it'll be normal again, because God knows what happened there.
It'll pop up in your feeds and you won't be bereft of FOF every week.
I know, right? I know. There's people like just staring out at the coast, like, oh, where's FOF gone?
When will my podcast return from the sea?
Like a Lloyd's TSB advert from the 90s. Or Scottish Widows, or whatever it was called. That British Building Society. All right. We've got our wrap.
There you go.
We've done our random reference. Let's roll on, Seb. Enjoy, everybody.
Hello, I'm Al Murray, and you're listening to Fighting on Film, the world's #1 war film podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. Welcome to We Have Ways Fest 2024. Wait. This is the Arsenal stage, which has been kindly sponsored by Guidel. It's an app that lets you consume or create audio snapshots of your favorite historical sites. They have a table just around the corner if you want to know any more information. Our first speakers are the hosts of the Fighting on Film podcast, Robbie Maguire and Matthew Moss, and they're joined by Sebastian Abineri. Please give them a warm welcome.
Hello. Lovely to see so many of you here. As we were introduced there, we are Fighting on Film. We're a war movie podcast. And this year, as many of you will already know, is the 80th anniversary of Operation Market Garden and the Battle in Arnhem. And we thought a great way of commemorating this and talking about something related to both war movies, of course, and the actual anniversary itself is we thought we'd discuss the making of the absolute classic movie A Bridge Too Far, which, hard to believe, came out 53 years ago. And we are absolutely thrilled today to be joined by a member of Attenborough's private army, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. But let me introduce Sebastian Abineri.
He was a member of the APA, and Rob's going to just introduce Sebastian a bit, and then we're going to have some questions, and then we'll try and get to some questions from the audience as well at the end.
Thank you. So, this, as we say, Sebastian, and this is some of Sebastian's credit: the Queen Street Gang, Warship, of course, A Bridge Too Far, Secret Army, and Goodnight Sweetheart. So, Seb, how did you get involved on A Bridge Too Far?
Well, I was very lucky to be chosen to be part of Attenborough's Private Army, which was a name we gave ourselves. There was 40 young actors who were chosen by him to replicate the actions of the parachute regiment at Arnhem Bridge. And we went to this huge sort of big audition at the dance centre in Covent Garden. And we all filed past Dickie Attenborough, and he said, right, OK, we'll choose you. And it was great. I actually managed to get out onto the shoots. And we were sort of designed to be like a sort of repertory company of actors who were trained to do the action sequences, but also to play small parts as we went through. So the idea was to lend the film some authenticity by having a fully trained company of actors who knew how to do the manoeuvres, and yet at the same time could be called upon to play small parts as they went. And it was the most amazing experience I've ever had, because I was privileged to meet some of the veterans. Actually had a conversation with Colonel Frost, who said he was absolutely furious when he got to Arnhem Bridge, because he was looking back at the reconstruction of Arnhem that the unit had created of the 1940s buildings around the bridge, which we then proceeded to blow up throughout the course of the filming. And he said, I was furious when I got to Arnhem. And I said, why? He said, because it was just like this. He said, the town was over there with all the houses, and where we are now was green fields. He said we could have dropped 3 battalions straight onto the bridge without having to march from Ginkle Heath to Arnhem Bridge. And they should have also, he said, they should have activated the Dutch resistance, who could have grabbed the bridge before they arrived. So they could actually have won the battle, you know, because he said the only reason we had to surrender was because we ran out of ammunition. But anyway, we tried to replicate what they'd done and had a lot of fun doing it. We went out there, we were trained by actors who'd been in the military. So we had a corporal from the Royal Norfolks, a corporal from the Marines, and a sergeant major from the Coldstream Guards, who were all actors. And this was all overseen by Colonel John Waddy, who was ex-director of the Special Air Service. So they put us through their paces for 2 weeks, and then we got on with the filming and proceeded to blow what had been constructed to bits.
So it's interesting there, you mentioned that you were trained, obviously, by soldiers. And that's something we associate with, you know, later films like Platoon and Dale Die, and doing the whole, you know, training actors to be soldiers in boot camp. So how long were you training for, and what did that involve? Because obviously you were portraying not only the British, but also Germans and American troops as well.
Yeah, we did all the action sequences as well as replicating what the parachute regiment did. So we basically, first thing we did was get the uniforms, have our hair cut, and then learn the foot drill. We had to learn how to march and all that, and learn the drill. And then we had to do weapons handling, and then we did fire and movement, and how to attack a pillbox, that sort of thing. So it's basically 2 weeks training we went through, which sort of got us in the right frame of mind, at least, to carry out our job on the film.
So there's an incident in your book. Could you tell us about John Frost and the dog?
Oh yeah, there was a German security man who was put in charge of guarding the arms truck. Now the arms truck was full of real weapons, and they were worried that the South Moluccan terrorist group might hijack it and use them. So they put a fierce Doberman in charge of this, guarding this arm truck with this German security man. And he kept bragging about what the dog would do if ever it got off its rope. So you need to be really careful, you know, this dog will kill you if he gets off his rope. So anyway, Colonel Frost, I was there at the time, Colonel Frost walking past, and this guard let the dog off the rope. And it went for Colonel Frost. And Colonel Frost, I don't know what he did, but he seemed to swell in size and dominated this dog, and it actually went back on its haunches and went whimpering back to its owner. And the next day he was fired. He was sacked the next day. Didn't see him again. So it put me in mind of what Churchill said, you know, they're either at your feet or at your throat.
So one of the weapons that probably would have been on that truck is a little-known weapon called the Pier, which has a bit of a starry role in the film. Got to bring it up. So you have a great story about some of the filming that was done with the Pier.
Oh, yeah.
And it appears in your book, Boys from the Bridge. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. Yes. They had to do some pickup shots, you know, where they've done a sequence and they go, right, we need, you know, a shot of a Bren going off, need some lads firing a few Lee Enfields, and we'd like to see the Pier be fired in close-up. So the first assistant director said to the assistant director who was detailed off to carry out doing this sequence, he said, now look, he said, the worst thing you can do, Jeffrey, is fire the Pier at the camera. He said, because if it hits the camera, it will break it. He said, and if you break the camera, I'll kill you. He said, and worse than that, it'll be the end of your career. So anyway, we all lined up, and Jeffrey said, hey, wouldn't it be great if we got a close-up of the Pier shell going straight down the camera lens? And I thought, oh no, he's going to do it. He's actually going to try and do it. So he said, I said, hang on a minute, how are you going to stop the Pier shell breaking the camera? He says, it's okay, we got a bit of unbreakable glass, we'll put it in front of the camera. So anyway, he put the bit of unbreakable glass in front of the camera. They fired the Pier. It went straight through this unbreakable glass, right down the filters of the camera, and the cameraman ended up with a massive black eye because it had gone wallop straight in the thing. And Bill the armourer, who fired the Pier, said, you're the only tank commander who's seen that and lived, he said. So anyway, he actually ran. The first assistant director ran away because David Tomlin, the legendary David Tomlin, who was the first assistant director on the film, said, what's happened to that fucking camera? He said, Jeffrey fired the Pier at it. Oh, I told him not to do it, where is he? And chased him off down the road. But fortunately, it all calmed down. It was all right in the end. But he was quite well connected, Jeffrey.
So what was the most challenging thing about being on a set like that?
What was the heat? It was really hot summer in 1976. It was so hot. Cows were dying in the fields.
Hotter than this?
It was, yeah, probably a bit hotter than this. It was really hot. The whole thing was not a challenge. It was like a wonderful sort of adventure. But it got very hairy sometimes.
There were a couple of fires, weren't there?
We were up on a roof and they were simulating fire on the roof, and they had these little canisters burning away, which set light to the roof, and the roof went up. And we were in a building that underneath were 5,000 gallons of petrol to fuel the vehicles. So we beat an orderly retreat off the roof and came down. And then someone in the Dutch were watching, someone said, oh, the British run away. And we thought, sod that. We went back up and put the fire out. And we actually managed to take our denizens off and beat the flames. And there was a big water tower, and an actor called Niall Padden pushed that over, and that put all the flames out. And then Dickie Attenborough turned up in a tank with his head poking out of the tank. And he said, well done, boys, well done. Oh, thank goodness you've saved the building. He said, David, take all their names, darling, and they're all going to stay out till the end of filming. So we all stayed out till the very end of the filming. Unfortunately, we were the football team as well. We put the fire out, so our football team stayed out for the whole 6 months.
So you mentioned Attenborough there. What's he like as a director?
Well, I was a very small cog in the sort of wheel, so I didn't have much to do with him as a director as such. I mean, he was... I'd say he left the large sequences, he planned them very well, and let David Tomlin, who was a brilliant first assistant director, sort that out. And then he'd work with the actors, he'd work with Anthony Hopkins and all the actors on their performances. I had a very small bit in it where I had my leg blown off, and he's an actor's director, he's an actor. So he's an actor's director, he'd come in and help you with small moments. But he looked after the performances, of which there were some wonderful performances. And then the spectacle was sort of handled more by Dave Tomlin, who was the first AD, and organised it all as they'd planned it.
I think one thing I'm always really interested in is what's your favourite scene from the actual film? As a viewer, knowing what you know, when you watch it again, what scene stands out to you? And
There's several. I mean, the one where Anthony Hopkins as Colonel Frost receives the bar of chocolate from, is it General Beatrix? That's a very moving moment. And he doesn't do anything, it's just his reaction to the fact that they've been defeated, and he's getting his own chocolate handed to him that had been dropped behind into the German lines. And that, I think, is a very good moment, great moment. Several of Olivier's moments I thought were just beautiful. The way he captured the weariness and the devastation and the tragedy of the whole thing, of the whole situation. And, and it takes a great actor like that to be able to, put that across. I mean, you can spend a fortune on budget, but if you've got an actor who can deliver that in a couple of moments, then, like Anthony Hopkins and Olivier, then that's money in the bank, isn't it? It's what makes the film memorable as well.
yeah, it's that big cast.
Yeah.
Talking of actors there, Seb, who was your favourite member of the principal cast on set?
Well, I don't like to say favourite. Well, I mean, it's
memorable,
Anthony Hopkins, because, well, he was playing our commanding officer, and he'd done all the training with us. So we naturally had a very strong link with Tony Hopkins, and he also, we were living in an old folks home. What they'd done is they'd chucked a load of old folks out of their home and put them into a new old folks home, and we were put into the old folks home, which ended up like an army barracks. So we had sort of 5 blokes to a room, and he bought us a washing machine so that we could wash our clothes, Anthony Hopkins did, and he bought us a table tennis table, which was quite fun, and then he bought us something else which wasn't particularly useful, which was an old out-of-tune piano, which people used to wander in 3 o'clock in the morning pissed and
very much appreciated by everyone.
Tunes when you try to get some sleep.
So, as we mentioned earlier, that you remember the APA, and the APA had the unique role of playing not only the Brits but also the American Airborne and the 30 Corps.
Yeah,
and
Poles,
so
Germans.
you're basically rescuing yourselves, but you didn't quite get
ourselves,
there.
yeah.
And you're fighting yourselves as well. So, with all of that, what was the kit like? Because you're in the unique position of having
Well, it was
worn
original.
all of it.
It was original World War II kit. So the first job was to make it fit properly, make your webbing fit. You go up and you go, my smock's too big. You say, sorry, forget it. My trousers are too baggy. Forget it. You put them on. And what they do is they get the webbing to fit. And once the webbing fitted, then you spend about an hour messing about with the webbing, trying to get that to fit properly. And once that fitted, you look soldierly, And as long as your boots fitted, and your webbing fitted, and your helmet fitted, they were happy. The rest of it could be outsize,
Well, I think for me the British kit's the coolest looking. But what was the most comfortable? What did you like the best?
Well, the most comfortable uniform was the American uniform, which was sort of, I don't know, brushed denim, probably, which was very, very comfortable, very cool, and it was very hot out there. The next most comfortable was the German uniform, funnily enough. And then the next one after that was the British uniform. And I said to Colonel Waddy, I said, how come, the American uniform is so comfortable, the German uniform's comfortable, but the British uniform is fucking horrible. You're scratching, you're itching and all that. And he said, yes, well, we like to get our men used to being in the ship before they actually have to start fighting.
So I think we're going to open the floor up to a few questions. So if you want to put your hands up and we'll pick some out. Any questions?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There we are.
No. They arrived in sort of waves. So you had the American lot coming over, and they were teaming up mainly with the other American actors, and I don't think much went on there. And then you had Sean Connery and Michael Caine, who got on extremely well. Anthony Hopkins, who basically, I don't think had a lot to do with other major, apart from Maximilian Schell. And there wasn't time for any of that. It was too hot to get ego problems. Well, I was aware of the Battle of Arnhem because my dad had spoken about it and said what a terrible thing it was. I mean, he wasn't involved in it; he was too young. But he told me about it, and I saw documentaries. I used to like Horrocks' documentaries, All Our Yesterdays, so I knew a bit about what happened, but I didn't get the full story until I actually got cast as one of the Attenborough's private army. And the first thing Dickie Attenborough did was get us to watch the film that the paratroopers made themselves after the battle, called Theirs Is the Glory. And we watched that, and he turned to us with tears in his eyes and said, we've got to get this right, boys. He said, we've got to get it right for those fellas who fought, and we took that quite seriously, and tried to do our best. Tried not to misbehave too much, but of course we did. I don't know really. It's how dangerous it is. I mean, the first thing that happened, we went out there, we landed at Schiphol Airport, and we went down to the place called the Cheese Factory at Booslow to get our uniforms. And in the car park of that, they got a load of Dutch tanks that they'd dug up out of the polder. And they tried to get this tank going, a Sherman tank, and they fired its engines up, and the bloody thing exploded. It just went bang. And all these special effects crew were going, laughing their heads off, going, oh, fucking hell, look at that, bang, it's just blown up. And then they got on to the next one and started work on that one and got that one moving for the film. I mean, it was chaotic. I mean, it was a bit like a military campaign, only with a huge dose of comedy injected into it, and probably even more chaos, ordered chaos, than there would be in a proper military campaign. But it was very like the most dangerous thing I think we did was crossing the River Vaal when we replicated the 82nd Airborne attempt to get attack on Nijmegen Bridge. And we had a couple of real paratroopers staying with us, and they said, right, can you put these life jackets on and your American uniforms on, which we did. And they took us down to Nijmegen, and they said, right, we want you to paddle across the river and attack the beach at the other end. So I said to the two paras, I said, are you coming in our boat? And they went, no. I said, why not? He said, it looks a bit iffy, he said. I said, iffy? I said, you're paratroopers. Iffy? What's that about? He said, no, we leave that to the Marines, he said. So anyway, we went across, paddled across. They took the engine out of our boat and put it in Robert Redford's boat. So we were left with just paddling with our rifle butts and paddles that we'd been given. And I tell you what, when the first explosion went off, we overtook all the other boats that had engines. And we were like heading for people were going in the river. It was absolutely terrifying. And we paddled back, and I had eyes like a set of dog's balls, sort of like full of adrenaline. Got back to the other bank, and these two paratroopers were sitting there, and he said, I told you it was iffy, didn't I?
Chap in the red shirt.
Did you get to speak to any veterans after the film?
I got to speak to Colonel Frost, which was an absolute privilege because he told me. I spoke to Andrew Milbourne, who lost his hands on a Vickers. He engaged a German tank with a Vickers machine gun, which apparently you're supposed to do if you see it, to make them close up their eye holes, in the hope that someone with a Pier can come along and blow it up. But there was no one with a Pier, unfortunately, and so he ended up with his hands blown off. His mate, Taffy Brace, the medic, tourniqueted his hands, and he was so busy he didn't have time to release the tourniquets. So poor old Andrew got gangrene, and then he was taken prisoner by the Germans, and they amputated his hands without an anaesthetic because they'd run out themselves with a guillotine, and he was taken prisoner, and I think he escaped with a bloke with one leg. And they got 20 miles before they were picked up by the Germans. And so that was an absolute privilege talking to him. And also Colonel Waddy, who was at the battle. I mean, all of them were so... It was a weird experience for them, I suppose, because they'd come out to watch the filming and we were reconstructing what they'd actually done and lost all their mates all those years ago. Colonel Frost was quite complimentary about our contribution. He said that we reminded him of his men, which is the biggest compliment we could have got. Of course, nothing like them. They actually did it, but it's difficult to say. Yeah, I mean, it was a huge experience to and the Dutch, who were wonderful, and the story about how 150 paratroopers were stuck in Arnhem after the battle, and the Dutch hid them for 4 months under the noses of the Germans, fed them, and then evacuated them successfully across the River Rhine without losing a single person. And they were amazing, the Dutch. And they still. I mean, if you go to Oosterbeek Cemetery, every Dutch child in Arnhem has their own grave to look after. So they look after the British soldiers' graves.
We've got time for one more question. This gentleman here.
So you mentioned Anthony Hawkins did the training with you.
Yeah.
Did any of the other main cast do the training? And so
No.
How did they do?
No, it was Anthony Hopkins did the training. It's too difficult. I mean, you've got an actor who's going to be paid £2 million a week. You're not going to put him through boot camp, are you? You're going to hope he can turn up on time and remember his lines, I think, probably. But we had some great actors out there. I mean, yeah, he was the only one who did the full training. And I think it showed in his performance. I really do. I think it's like research. He did a wonderful performance, and I thought Elliot Gould was wonderful. They used to call Elliot Gould the BGB. That was the big girl's blouse, because he couldn't drive the Jeep and say his lines at the same time.
Famously, did John Frost say that Hopkins ran a bit too fast?
Yes, Anthony Hopkins did a sequence where he had to run across his position to another position, and Colonel Frost said to him, "Excuse me," he said, "You're running too fast." And Anthony Hopkins said, "I'm running too fast?" He said, "Yes, you wouldn't run that fast." He said, "You see, the trick is you have to show the enemy that you have contempt for them by walking slowly." And he meant it. And you have to show your men that you have contempt for them as well. So you have to walk slowly. So Dickie Attenborough said, "We had to reload all the explosives, take the whole thing back to the beginning and make him do it again." And he still ran. He's just your instinct, isn't it? I mean, but he was an extraordinary man, Colonel Frost, and And it was an absolute privilege to meet him and the others. And General Urquhart as well. He was a wonderful character as well. He said, I do bear a striking resemblance to Sean Connery, he said, from the back. Which I thought was brilliant.
So I think that's all the time we have. Ladies and gentlemen, Sebastian Abineri. Yep. And if you want to learn more about... Thank you very much. If you want to learn more about Seb's time on the film, his book, The Boys from the Bridge, is a fantastic read, and we would love it if you would buy a copy. And our own episode with Sebastian, Tim, and Jack, members of the APA, that's available to listen to now as well. So there's tons more to learn about A Bridge Too Far. And thank you very much.
I'm Captain Dale Dye, and you're listening to Fighting on Film.
And there you have it. That was our talk at We Have Ways Fest 2024 and Roll On 2025. And with any luck, we'll be there again. We've already got some ideas in the fire for that one.
We do.
So yeah, if you see us again next year, do come and say hello. And next week we have a really interesting episode for you all to enjoy. We have Katrina Wood, who is none other than the Percy Herbert's daughter, joining us for a chat. So please do join us for that one, and we'll catch you next time on Fighting on Film. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. Bye.